Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Is It Ableist? My name is Devin, and I am so happy to be back with you all today. Thank you so much for being patient with me and just allowing me to have the week off to focus on some other things, but I am back and I'm so happy to be back. Today we are doing episode 6, and it is going to be a little bit different. I asked you all if you would like to see an episode about me talking about my life as a professional disabled dancer, and you all overwhelmingly responded with yes. So that's what we are going to be talking about today. My life. I will be telling you my life story. So as always, this is just my life, my experiences. I always urge you all to continue to do your research and to always look farther and wider to continue to learn more about the disabled experience. And there are so many different life experiences to there are so many different life experiences to learn from, and I am just only one. So without further ado, let's jump in to this video. I started dancing at the age of 3 years old, and it wasn't for the typical reasons of just my mom throwing me into something as an extracurricular activity or just being a natural or anything like that. I actually started dancing for more serious reasons. My mom put me in dance to help me to learn how to walk. I was born with a rare eye condition called achromatopsia, and one of the things that it affected majorly was my balance and my coordination. And to explain what achromatopsia is a eye disorder where the cone cells do not grow in the eyes. We all have 2 sets of cells, cones and rod cells. Most people have 70 to 80 cone cells. I only have 10 in each eye, and my body cannot generate anymore. So that causes a lot of other issues in terms of not being able to see very far, having what is known as day blindness. So I cannot see well in the daytime. I can't go outside without sunglasses or anything like that. I don't have very strong depth perception, almost none. My blind spot is in the center of my eye, as well as some developmental issues and a second eye condition known as nystagmus, where my eyes make what looks almost like a jumping or shaking motion back and forth. So to give a little bit of backstory just about my birth and entrance into this world, I was surrounded by fibroid tumors in my mom's stomach, and because of that, I was born extremely early, and that initially was kind of what my doctors thought was the cause of my eye condition. And when I was 3 months old, my mom really started to notice that there were some kind of issues that were happening because my eyes were not moving normally and I wasn't developing normally. I didn't crawl. I kind of just scooted along. And so there was some very obvious physical issues. And of course, my mom contacted my doctors and wanted to find out what the issue was. By the time I was 2, my doctors realized that I had a eye condition, but they did not know what it was. And I still developed mentally as well as physically, was not in the same place as my peers. I could communicate really well. I could talk. I was communicating at a really high level, but physically I was not there. I was almost 3 and I still couldn't walk. So by the time I turned 3 years old, I did finally start walking, but I was very unsteady. I was falling all the time. So my mother knew that she couldn't put me in regular sports because I did not have the hand-eye coordination. So my aunt suggested putting me in dance. My cousin was in dance at the time, and she thought that maybe it might be a good idea to get into dance and that maybe it would help with my balance and my coordination and help me walk better. So in the fall, my mother enrolled me into dance, and that's where it all started. And I was taking dance at one of the only Black-owned dance studios at the time. I loved it. It was incredible. I completely just fell head over heels for dance. And unfortunately, the owner of our dance studio ended up being killed a few years later. And I transferred to a new studio closer to where my mom was working at the time. I started dancing again, still loved it. It was just truly the center of my heart, and it helped. It did help me eventually learn how to walk and balance and function fairly normally. But then when I was about 8 or 9 years old is when the bullying started from my peers and eventually from my instructors at the time. I remember my instructor telling me one day that dancing was not for blind people. And as a 9-year-old, that's really difficult to hear. And so by the time I was 10 years old, I told my mom that I did not want to dance anymore. And so I stopped, and I did not dance again until I was 15 years old. And I started dancing just because I needed another elective at the time, but I still was pretty scarred from my previous experiences. But I needed an elective, and so I decided to dance. And I took just a normal basic studio class, met my dance teacher at the time, and I fell in love with it all over again. And this was the first time that I had a teacher who I started to realize was invested in me, who had conversations with me, asked me what I needed, and really started paying attention to me on a closer level. And that was something that I hadn't experienced since my first studio. And so I started falling in love with it all over again. And by the time I was a junior and senior, I was taking dance and choir equally. And I ended up becoming really close with my dance teacher, and she was basically like a second mother for me. And I really credit her with giving me my love for dance back, because I truly thought that it was something that was just not for someone like me. I graduated from high school and I went to community college, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was kind of somewhere between psychology and maybe sociology. I really wasn't sure at that time. But I knew that I didn't want to do music anymore, and so I started community college, and I found out that the community college had a dance program, decided to take a class on a whim, just for fun, and fell in love with dance again. It was a jazz class, and I, again, had an incredible teacher who told me one day that I had something that was different and incredible, and that was something that was totally new to me. I'd never had anyone say anything like that to me. And before I knew it, like one class became two classes became three, and I was full on back into dancing. I was taking ballet again, and I was also introduced to modern, which I fell just, which I fell head over heels in love with. It was so different, and I just felt a little bit more at home with it than I did with any other style. And so I started training more and more. And I met people and professors who were open and willing to meet me halfway and to really communicate with me and learn what worked best for me. I ended up meeting my lifelong dance mentor, and I also ended up realizing that I loved to choreograph. It was my first time doing improvisation and choreography, and I just fell in love with choreography more than anything. I realized very quickly that that's what I really felt like I was meant to do in the dance world. And so I decided that I wanted to make dance my life full time. It was a terrifying decision because I knew that it may not be accepted by my family, even some of my friends, and that I was in for a really rough life. But by this point, I feel like I'd already overcome a lot and had to face so much that it just kind of seemed like something else that I knew I was going to have to fight for, but I was willing to fight for it. And so I made the decision to go to, and so I made the decision that I wanted to major in dance. And I decided to go to school out of state in Oklahoma. And so once I graduated from community college, I moved out of Texas and went to the University of Central Oklahoma. And in this time is when I feel like I was truly given the chance to start to find my own potential and understand what I truly wanted in the dance world. I was never someone who was picked for many things. I always had to work harder, and I knew that from a very young age. As a disabled child, you learn very early on that you're going to have to work harder than everyone around you. You learn that whether it's fair or not, you have to constantly prove yourself to other people, and especially being in the dance world, that is entirely built off of ableism and white supremacy. You're always having to prove your worth, really, whether you're disabled or not. But if you are disabled, you have to prove yourself even more. And so I went into my collegiate experience not really expecting much, not really expecting to be given a chance, and just knowing that it was just going to be another fight to be able to try and be on equal footing with everyone else. I went through a really rough experience with someone that I admired during my collegiate career, and it really broke me down as a person and as a dancer. I remember entering the second part of my college career feeling as if I was going in a direction that I didn't really know if it was the right one, because I felt so incredibly low about myself. I had experienced a lot of ableism, and a lot of that resulted in unintentional abuse. And I hadn't really figured out how to heal from that yet. So I went into my second half of my college career with a lot of defeat and a lot of shame and a lot of self-esteem issues. But a lot of that started to change when I met the directors of my college. And they said to me, we want to learn about you. We have never had anyone like you before, but we're open and we're willing to learn. And I didn't realize it really at the time, but that was one of the best things I could have ever heard in my entire life. I was given the chance to choreograph. I was given the chance to dance on a pre-professional dance company. I was given a lot of opportunities that up until that point were not available to me. And it changed everything about my perspective on dance and about my perspective on the world. I still knew that the system was against me, but I also knew that there were cracks in the foundation that I could squeeze through. And so after I graduated from the university, I moved back to Texas and just spent the next 3 years trying to figure out how to be a professional dancer. No one really tells you how to be a professional dancer. You kind of just figure it out as you go. But no one especially tells you how to be a disabled professional dancer. And so I ran into a lot of unsafe situations and had a lot of heartbreak. And at one point, really considered giving up dancing because I just couldn't seem to find my place. I couldn't find a place that would accept me for who I am. I couldn't find any type of safety, any security, and it just didn't seem like it was going to happen. And there's definitely a point where I thought I was going to give up on it and do something else. But then finally, sometime around, I think like 2018-ish is when things really started to change. I was lucky enough that the summer after I graduated from undergrad, I spent time in Washington, D.C., and I felt really called to that community. I didn't know why, but I did. And I did my best to keep up those connections. And I went back to DC in 2018. And one of my biggest dreams came true, and that was performing at the Kennedy Center. And it was the most surreal experience of my life. I remember in that moment feeling like something changed, like I had turned a corner, and just kind of realizing that I just needed to be patient. And I was with a group of humans who were open and inclusive, progressive, accepting, all the things that I had been searching for, but still pushed me, still challenged me, but in the safest and most supportive way possible. And I knew from that point on that I would eventually probably end up there or somewhere else. And so I kept training, and I ended up meeting some more humans who really started to bring me back to my humanity and connect me back to myself in terms of dance, and really helped me start to realize that I have a power and a soul, and that I have a place in the dance world. And so in 2019, I got my wish and I moved to Washington, D.C. And that's when my entire life completely changed. I all of a sudden was in a new community with more opportunities, with a more open, more receptive, more inclusive community in terms of race and gender and ableism and everything that we're fighting for in this new world. All of a sudden I was in a place where those things were being questioned and challenged. And it was truly eye-opening for me. I never thought that I would be on a professional dance company or that I would choreograph professionally. But not one, but both of those things happened when I moved to Washington, D.C. I found an incredible professional modern company that has been one of the greatest experiences of my life. I have an artistic director who has experience with disabled people, and it has been one of the safest, most wonderful experiences of my life. I've been given opportunities to choreograph, and I have entered spaces where I could exist as the person that I am. And I am just truly grateful. And my expansion and my deepening of understanding of myself and realizing that I have a place in the dance world only grew over this past year. I had the chance to study with some of my closest friends and watch myself as well as the people around me grow together. I have found a voice, my voice, in the dance community in a way that I never thought that I could have ever had before. I have some of the strongest connections and some of the most incredible support that I could ever ask for. And it has completely changed my world once again. As a disabled person, being in an ableist art form has not been easy. It's been hard, it's been frustrating, it's been painful. But then I think about the fact that it's the thing that gave me the ability to walk. And it's so easy to kind of get lost in all the smoke and mirrors of everything. But I feel like I've been brought back to the root of it all and the reason why I started dancing. And it's changed everything for me. I realize that I do have a place in the dance world, and that I have a voice, and that I want to use it, and that I want to keep educating about the place that disabled people have in the dance world, because we do have a place. And it's time to continue to make that space even larger, even more inclusive. And I'm committed to doing that. I hope that me telling my story will be helpful to other dancers who have disabilities who maybe have just been too afraid to try, or for educators or anyone who just wants to make their spaces more inclusive, to start to ask questions and to start to change their space and grow their space. At the end of the day, I just want my story to be a spark for education, for learning, for unlearning, and for growth. Because I feel like I speak for myself and for the disabled community in saying that we're capable of anything. So I hope that you all have enjoyed hearing my life story as a professional dancer. There's so many more aspects of my life as a disabled dancer and just as a disabled human being in general. So if you all would be interested in maybe a part 2 or talking, so if you all would be interested in maybe having a part 2 or me going into more detail about some of the things I talked about, please let me know. I'm always open for comments and feedback. But I'm just so grateful to be able to share my life experiences with you all. As always, I post every single Friday, 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I hope that you all will be back with me next week for episode 7. Thank you so much. Bye.